Hello everyone, welcome to another video. As you may see from the title, today we are continuing with our mythology saga. So, I guess it is time for Roman mythology. And since we already read the Greek one, we can compare and see how much between them, how much similarity is there between them. Instead of saying something else, I'm just gonna say similarities. So here we go. I'll just start reading right away. Aeneas, founder of Rome. The Trojan prince, Aeneas, the son of the mortal Anchises and the goddess Venus or Aphrodite, first featured in Homer's Iliad, but was elevated to the role of founding father of Rome in Virgil's powerful epic, the Aeneid. His story begins at the end of the Trojan War. Aeneas was forced to flee Troy when the city fell to the Greeks. The Aeneid describes Aeneas' subsequent voyage to Italy, beset with drama and misfortune. So we're starting right away with some drama. Let's see what it is. Escape from Troy. The poem begins with Aeneas storm-bound in Carthage, telling the queen about the events that had led to his flight from Troy. He explained how the Trojans had been duped by a giant wooden horse that the Greeks had left outside Troy. The Trojans brought in within the city walls, unaware that Greek warriors hid inside. That night they crept out and opened the city gates to the rest of the Greek forces who destroyed Troy. Aeneas initially joined the fight, but his slain cousin Hector called on him in a dream to found a new Trojan city. His mother Venus also urged him to flee and take his family, Troy's sacred relics, and the household gods with him. Aeneas escaped with his son Ascanius and his father Anchises, but his wife Creusa became separated from the group. When he went back, Aeneas found only her ghost, who told him he was destined to find a new city in Italy. Fleeing by sea, Aeneas and his followers went to Thrace and then Delos, where Apollo, the god of prophecy, advised him to seek the land of his ancestors. Aeneas therefore sailed to Crete, home of the Trojan ancestor Teucrus. But he was directed by the gods in a vision to go instead to Italy, home of his ancestor Dardanus. Next, Aeneas met with the Harpies, fierce female-faced bird creatures. One cursed Aeneas, professing that he would reach his goal only when dire hunger forced the group to eat their tables. They sailed to Sicily, where Aeneas's elderly father died, and then set off for Italy. But the wind god Aeolus, by order of Juno, who hated the Trojans, sent their ships widely off course. Taking shelter in the North African city of Carthage, Aeneas met the queen, Dido. It was to her that he told the story of his flight from Troy. Encouraged by Venus, Aeneas and Dido fell in love and consummated their passion in a cave during a storm. When Jupiter, king of the gods, heard of this, he sent his messenger Mercury to remind Aeneas to leave Carthage to found a new city. The tragic queen. On hearing of her love's departures, Dido asked her sister Anna to build a sacrificial pyre and threw herself upon it. My gosh, we are starting with the drama already. From the flames, she could see Aeneas' ships leaving, so the queen thrust his sword through her body. To end her agony, Juno sent Iris, the rainbow, down to earth to release her soul by snipping a lock of Dido's hair as an offering to Dis, ruler of the underworld. As Aeneas sailed away from Carthage, he looked back and saw the smoke of the funeral pyre. He did not learn of Dido's suicide until later, when he met her shade in the underworld. Aeneas seeks his father. Returning to Sicily, Aeneas held funeral games to commemorate his dead father, Anchises. Meanwhile, Juno, still bearing her ancient grudge and anxious to delay Aeneas's quest, inspired the Trojan women to set fire to the ships. Jupiter sent down torrential rain to extinguish the flames, and in a vision, Anchises urged Aeneas to pursue his quest and to meet him in the underworld. Aeneas sailed on, and despite the loss of his helmsman, Palinurus, who fell overboard, finally reached Italy. Anxious to see his dead father again, Aeneas was advised by the Sibyl of Cumae to pluck a golden bow to give to Proserpina, queen of the underworld and wife of Dis. The bow ensured them safe passage with the ferryman Charon, across the river Styx. The Sibyl then sedated the guard dog Cerberus with a drugged honey cake. In the underworld, Aeneas spoke to the ghost of Dido, but she turned away from him without a word. Anchises was overjoyed to see his son, however, and stretched out his arms. Aeneas tried in vain to embrace his father, but his arms closed on empty air. Then, as they walked with the Sibyl beside the river Lethe, Anchises prophesied the founding of Rome. To further impress on his son the importance of his mission, Anchises showed him a parade of the spirits of the great Romans who would be born, including Romulus, Julius Caesar, and Augustus. Aeneas then returned to the world of light, the promised land. I have a question. Wasn't there someone living in Italy already when this whole shebang happened? Did they consider that land belongs to maybe someone else? I don't know. Just say. The Promised Land. As they sailed up the west coast of Italy towards the river Tiber, Aeneas and his followers skirted the island of the enchantress Circe, daughter of the sun. There they heard the howls and cries of men whom she had turned into wild animals, lions, boars, bears, and wolves. The sea god Neptune sent them favorable winds that took them safely away. I like this Circe girl already. The Trojans landed in Latium at the Tiber's mouth and laid out their first meal on platters of crusty bread, piling them high with freshly harvested fruit and vegetables. They were so ravenous that they ate not only the meal but the bread plates too. Aeneas' son, Ascanius, yes, joked that they were even eating at the tables. The prediction from before. Realizing that this fulfilled the Harpy's prophetic curse, Aeneas and his followers knew they had found the place to build their city, and Jupiter thundered 3 times in confirmation. Aeneas did not plan to conquer Latium with a hostile invasion. Instead, he paid court to Lavinia, the daughter of King Latius, who was said to be the son of god Faunus. Once again, however, the enmity of Juno worked against him. The goddess pursued Lavina's mother, Queen Amata, that her daughter must marry Turnus, ruler of the neighboring Rutuli. Okay? Juno then called on Alecto, one of the 3 Furies, or goddesses of retribution, to foment war. The final conflict. Vastly outnumbered by Turnus's forces, Aeneas initially despaired, but was then visited by the river god Tiberinus in a dream. The god told him that he should find a place on the river bank where a white sow was nursing 30 piglets. There his son Ascanius would one day found a city called Alba Longa. Encouraged by Tiberinus, Aeneas then gained the support of the aged Evander, king of Pallanteum, on the Palatine Hill, where Rome would later be founded, and of Tarchon, the king of the Etruscans. With new allies and help from the gods, Aeneas began to gain ground. When the enemy tried to set fire to the Trojan fleet, the goddess Cybele turned the ships into nymphs who swam away. However, Turnus had Juno on his side and killed King Evander's son Pallas, taking his belt as a trophy. Finally, Aeneas and Turnus met in a single combat. Venus supported Aeneas, while Turnus had his sister, the water nymph Juturna, at his side. Jupiter then persuaded Juno to abandon Turnus and cease her opposition to Aeneas, assuring her that the Latin name Latium and language would be preserved. Jupiter then sent a snake-haired fury to drive off Juturna and harry Turnus. I feel like I'm reading words that I have never seen in my life. Okay. Aeneas wounded Turnus, but was about to spare his life until he saw that he was wearing Pallas's belt. In fury, he drove his sword through Turnus's heart. The epic poem ends in Turnus's death, which also ended the war. So we have here the start of Rome. And the timeline is Aeneas flees Troy because Greek have sneakily won the war. Not sneakily, I guess you gotta work smart, not hard, right? Sometimes. So Aeneas flees Troy with his father Anchises after his wife's ghost tells him he must find a land of the Tiber. In Delos, Aeneas offers sacrifices to Apollo, but misunderstands clues about the site of his future city. In Crete, Aeneas has a vision in which the gods tell him to travel to Italy. The Harpies attack Aeneas after he is blown off course to their home on the Strophades Islands. In love with Dido, queen of Carthage, Aeneas only leaves her when the gods remind him of his fate. Yeah, he had a hallucination and left her behind. Like seriously, she is a queen. She was a queen already. Couldn't he have stayed in Carthage and be a king with her? No? In Sicily, Aeneas performs funeral games following the death of his father, Anchises. The Sibyl of Cumae leads Aeneas to the underworld, where he talks to several spirits, including Dido and Anchises. He did not talk to Dido. She did not talk to him back. The future of Rome is revealed to him. Dun, dun, dun. Landing in Latium, Aeneas is welcomed at the mouth of the river Tiber by King Latinus, who offers his daughter Lavinia in marriage. The Trojans go to war in Italy. Aeneas initially sustains heavy losses before enlisting King Evander and his people as allies. In a duel with Turnus, Aeneas is the victor, and it ends the war. New cities. Aeneas founded the city of Lavinium in Latium and named it for his wife Lavinia. After Aeneas' death, his son Ascanius founded the city of Alba Longa, at the spot prophesied by the river god Tiberinus in the Alban hills southeast of Rome. For 400 years, the descendants of Aeneas ruled Alba Longa until Romulus and Remus founded Rome. According to legend, war began the war between the two cities broke out in the 7th century BC. Livy described how two pairs of triplets, the Horatii of Rome and the Curiatii of Alba Longa, did battle. The Romans emerged victorious. Historically, the Romans and the people of Latium were part of a confederation known as Latin League, which fought together against enemies. When the Albans deserted the Romans in a war against the Etruscans, the Romans killed the Alban leader Metius, razed Alba Longa to the ground, and brought in people to Rome. Excuse me, but that means that the whole Aeneas's journey was in vain, because again, then the city that he fought for and that his son founded was destroyed. Am I right, or am I right? So far, we are not hearing, we are hearing a lot of new names, right? But taking into the account actual gods, feels like all the same, just different name. Anyway, but let's continue. A desire seized Romulus and Remus to build a city, the founding of Rome. The myth of the brothers Romulus and Remus was not the only story of the founding of Rome, but it became the widely accepted one. Early accounts claimed that the twins were the sons of the Trojan hero Aeneas, but most versions set the story 15 generations later. Aeneas' son Ascanius founded the ancient city of Alba Longa, about 19 kilometers or 12 miles away from the site that was later to become Rome. Centuries later, Alba Longa was inherited by the two brothers, Amulius and Numitor. Amulius suggested to his brother that they divide their inheritance into cities, taking the reins of the kingdom and the other treasures brought by their ancestor Aeneas from Troy. Numitor agreed and chose the kingdom, while Amulius took the treasure. But with the wealth brought by that treasure, Amulius schemed against his brother and deposed and imprisoned him. Great. Birth of the twins. Fearing a challenge from any descendants of Numitor, Amulius killed Numitor's son, Aegisthus, and forced his daughter Rhea Silvia to become a Vestal virgin. According to most accounts, Mars, the god of war, seduced her as she lay sleeping on a riverbank or in a sacred grove, telling her that she would bear 2 sons, who would exceed all men in bravery. Other accounts said that the true father was a masked Amulius himself. When her twin, but wasn't she Amulius's daughter? Gosh. Anyway, when her twin children Romulus and Remus were born, Rhea Silvia was either put to death for breaking her virginal vows or locked up for life. As for the babies, Amulius ordered a servant to drown them in the river Tiber. What? Instead, the servant cast them adrift in a basket, and then the river god brought them safely to the bank. A female wolf who had just whelped found the babies and suckled them to health. They were then discovered by Faustus, a shepherd, or in some accounts a swineherd or cowherd, who brought up the children with the help of his wife, Larentia. According to some sources, the story of the she-wolf came about because Larentia had been a lupa, a Latin slang word for a prostitute that also meant wolf. It's very small, but I feel like it's a famous statue of the wolf feeding the two twin brothers. Rome is founded. The boys grew handsome and strong. Famous for their feats of courage and generosity, they became leaders among the local farmers and huntsmen. When Romulus and Remus were grown men, they learned of their history from either Faustus or Mars, and launched a revolt. The usurper Amulius was killed, and King Numitor was restored to his throne. I thought it was the other way around, that Numitor was the overthrown one. I mean, the one... Anyway, nobody cares. The twins then decided to found a great city of their own. They declared that, in obedience to an oracle from Delphi, their city would be the sanctuary of the god of Asylum, and they gathered around them a great band of fugitives, outlaws, and runaway slaves. When it came to choosing the exact site of the city, Romulus preferred the Palatine Hill and Remus the Aventine Hill. To determine the site and which of them would be the city's first ruler, they agreed to seek a sign from the gods by observing the birds of omen. Romulus, in contrast to his brother, carried a crooked staff known as a litus, used by diviners to interpret future events by studying the flight of birds. This marked Romulus out symbolically as more conscientious than his brother, and therefore the more deserving of victory. When Remus saw 6 vultures, he claimed the gods favored him. Romulus then saw 12 vultures, though, accordingly to Dionysius's account, Romulus was trying to dupe Remus and hadn't seen any birds at all. Liar. The followers of each brother pronounced their respective champion as king. When Romulus started to plow a furrow to mark the city's boundary, an argument arose that quickly got out of hand. Remus jeered his brother and mocked him by jumping over the furrow, at which point Romulus, or some say his follower Celer, killed him. Romulus then founded the city of Rome in 753 BCE. It could not go without, killing everyone. Why can't, I'm just gonna say it in one phrase, why can't men talk things out? The end. The Sabine women. The Sabine women. The tale of Rome's initial foundation emphasizes the warlike nature of Romulus, inherited from his war godfather, and has a brutal theme that would come to define the Roman Empire expansion from centuries to come. On the Palatine Hill, as soon as Rome was built, Romulus placed all his men in legions to defend against surrounding people such as Sabine. Oh my gosh. The first problem facing the new city was the lack of women. For the refugees and outlaws attracted by Romulus and Remus were all men. I question why. To solve this, Romulus announced that he had discovered the altar of the harvest god Consus beneath the city and institute a festival, the Consualia. Oh my gosh, I see here a painting and the title. And I am hating it already. Consualia, in the god's honor. He invited the Sabines to the festival, but while the Sabine men watched the chariot races, Romulus gave a signal, throwing his cloak over his shoulder, and with this his men took up arms. They seized the Sabine women, carrying them over the threshold of their houses and claiming them as their wives. You may understand that claiming is really another word for graping without G. Very nice indeed. Pathetic. War and reconciliation. Hoodwinked and humiliated, the Sabine men resolved to wage war against the Romans. After Romulus killed the Sabine king Acron, the Sabines united under Titus Statius and laid siege to Rome. Tarpeia, the daughter of the commander of Rome's citadel, betrayed the city. In exchange for the Sabines' gold armlets, she opened the gates and let in the foreign army. I mean, excuse me, what did you expect? What did you expect? She did well. You deserve that. During the bloody fight that followed, Romulus was knocked down by a stone thrown at his head. The Romans began to retreat, rallying only when Romulus rose and prayed to Jupiter Stator, the stayer, for help. The battle was halted by the Sabine women, who ran between the two armies and begged their Sabine fathers and Roman husbands not to kill each other. Seriously. Peace was then made between the two sides under the joint leadership of Romulus and Tatius. Romulus ruled Rome for 40 years, establishing it as a mighty city. Many stories were told of his superior strength. In one display of power, Romulus stood on the Aventine hill and hurled his spear into the earth. It sank so deep that no man could pull it out. The shaft was made of hard cornel wood, and the tree that grew from it was treated with great reverence. In the time of Gaius Caesar, who reigned from 27 BCE to 14 CE, the roots of Romulus's cornel tree were inadvertently cut by workmen repairing some nearby steps, and the tree withered and died. Great. The city of Rome grew in power and prestige, but not without conflict. When ambassadors from the city of Laurentum were murdered by Tatius' kinsmen, Tatius was slain in revenge. A plague afflicted both Rome and Laurentum, as both sides were seen to be at fault in not pursuing justice for their murderers. Taking advantage of the plague, the people of Cameria attacked Rome, but Romulus defeated them, taking the city and half of its inhabitants. Ascension. One day, when Romulus was mustering his troops in a field of Mars, a storm arose. The air rang with peals? P-E-A-L-S, peals of thunder. And Romulus was wrapped in cloud and carried up to heaven in the chariot of his father Mars to become a god himself. Thereafter Romulus was worshipped under the name of Quirinus, the Sabine god of war. But he was not Sabine. My gosh. The next king after Romulus, Numa Pompilius, was a Sabine, showing that the union of the two people lasted beyond the reigns of Romulus and Tatius. I think I'm going to read one more chapter, and it seems like all the next chapters are mostly love stories between, gods and mortals and whatnot. A few of those I already went through, actually. So if you'd like to hear about them, you can maybe watch my Greek goddess video. But the last chapter that I'm going to read is The Father of Gods spurts red flames through the clouds. Numa outwits Jupiter. When angry Jupiter sent lightning flaming from the sky with torrents of rain, King Numa, the second king of Rome, was alarmed. However, his wife, the nymph Egeria, told him, "You must appease Jupiter and deflect his anger. Seek out Picus and his son Faunus, gods of the Roman soil, for they know how it can be done." These woodland gods could be found on the Aventine Hill, which was then a pastoral place of springs and wells, and not yet part of the city. Numa mixed wine and honey with water in the spring, where the two gods drank. When they fell asleep, Numa bound their hands tight with ropes, because nothing entails more trust than tying someone up. Upon awakening, Picus and Faunus tried to escape, but changing from one fantastical shape to another, they could not free themselves from Numa's bonds. Numa told them he meant no harm, of course. He simply wanted to learn how to appease Jupiter. The gods, while unable to offer this knowledge, were willing to bring Jupiter to him. "You ask what is not lawful for a man to know. Release us, and we will lure Jupiter down from the sky." Man versus God. Jupiter descended as promised, the earth sinking beneath his weight. Numa was so afraid that his face drained of blood and his hair stood on end. But he entreated the god, King of heaven, call back your thunderbolts, I pray. Tell me what offering you desire. Jupiter replied, cut off the head of an onion, answered Numa, quick as a flash. A man's, said Jupiter. Hair, Numa cut in. The life of a spread. At this, Jupiter roared with laughter. It delighted him to meet a mortal fit to conversate with a god, despite only possessing human faculties. Numa's quick wits were a match for his own. Jupiter then told Numa, when Apollo is at his highest point in the sky tomorrow, I will send you signs of empire. With these last words, Jupiter rose again into the sky with loud claps of thunder, leaving the awed Numa on the hillside. When Numa returned to the city in high spirits, the citizens were reluctant to believe his story. Actions speak louder than words, he said. Let us gather tomorrow and see what omens Jupiter will send. The next morning, the people of Rome came to Numa's door. The king sat among them on his throne, and they watched Apollo rise into the sky and travel across it. When the sun reached its zenith, Numa raised his hands to the sky and said, the time has come, Jupiter, to fulfill your vow. Omnipotent Jupiter. Jupiter answered King Numa from heaven by hurling 3 thunderbolts. Then a shield fell out of the sky, and a voice declared that so long as the shield was preserved, Rome would rule the world. Willy, Numa asked the craftsman Mamurius to make 11 more shields exactly like it, to confuse any would-be thief. These 12 sacred objects were kept in the temple of Mars, in a care of the dancing priest, the Sali. Roman Trinity. The Capitoline Triad of Jupiter, his wife Juno, and his daughter Minerva shared a temple on a Capitoline hill in Rome, known as the Temple of Jupiter. They were regarded as the ruling gods of Rome. This trio of supreme gods succeeded an earlier triad, known to scholars as the Archaic Triad, which consisted of the gods Jupiter, Mars, and Quirinus. Both triads were central to the public religion of ancient Rome. Capitolia temples were built across Italy and the provinces. In them, Jupiter was revered as Jupiter Optimus Maximus. My name is Jupiter Optimus Maximus. My name is Jeff. Jupiter, best and the greatest. Alongside Juno, his queen, and Minerva, the goddess of war. The Temple of Jupiter was regarded as one of the most important of all temples in ancient Rome. Within its walls lay the Jupiter stone, which was used by political officials to swear oaths. Its Latin name, Jupiter Lapis, became the title for a cult that came to regard the stone itself as a god. So there we have it. Roman mythology / history. I'm not certain if, I do remember that Romulus and Remus weren't really considered real people or to have existed actually existed in the past. Anyhow, there we have it. Some involvement of gods, some involvement of drama, some no, a lot of drama. Maybe a few of my comments sounded a bit, I don't know, as if I was angry or as if I did not like Rome. Nothing against, I don't know, Italian people or again the history of Rome, but I'm not a big fan. The whole shebang of being competitive, aggressive, wanting to never endingly grow the empire. I don't know, there were a lot of good things that Rome brought to many countries in Europe, and also there were many negative things. And of course, the fact that they stole all the gods from the Greeks is another thing. Not that I give any preference to any of them, but like seriously, couldn't you just, have a bit more creativity and at least go with something else? No? Okay, well, there you go. I'm not angry or, mad at anything. This is just me being silly, I guess. And passionate about my opinions. It's just my opinion. Okay. Hopefully that was okay. Anyway, but I'm glad we read it. I do not remember to have read before about that person that we first read, that I do not remember the name now. Aeneas, something like that. I did not know that he came from Troy, that he founded Rome, or again, his son founded a city. I mean, he did not found Rome. He founded another city, something Longa. And then people from, I don't know, generations and generations apart, and I don't even know if they were his descendants. So he did not found the Rome per se. He just came there. And on his way, made a huge mess. And of course, what followed was more of that mess. And of course, fights and killings and murders and the whole shebang. Anyway, but I think I'm gonna just leave it there. As I said, I'm glad I read about it. I learned something new. I hope you did as well. Probably not exactly what I imagined from this section, but since the mythology itself is exactly the same to the Greek one, just with the changed names, that's why they did not write, more about gods, because it's all the same. So there we go. Thank you so much for joining me today, as always, and I'll see you next time.